Hey everyone, it's Miss Carlson. Welcome back from fall break and to your first video lecture of second quarter. Make sure that you have taken the time to get a template or a sheet of paper out to take good Cornell notes. Remember to pause and play as needed. And this set of video notes is going to be over chapter 8, and we're going to look at section 1, which is over energy and life, and section 2, which covers photosynthesis. So let's go ahead and start off with 8.1. That points out to us and reminds us that homeostasis is hard work. And if you remember, homeostasis is the ability to maintain an internal stable environment. Now, organisms have to do this in order to survive and to be considered living. Remember, some of the things that make an organism living is that they're able to grow and develop. They're able to obtain and use energy and move materials around. And they're able to respond to environmental changes. So because homeostasis is such hard work, energy is going to be needed to accomplish all of that. And one of our main energy sources is ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. Now ATP is chemical fuel, or a compound that provides us with energy. And it stores and releases energy at certain times when we need it. And so we kind of think of ATP as being like a fully charged battery. In this picture, you can see we have two different types. We have a partially charged battery right here, which is what we refer to as ADP. Notice that the only difference between ADP and ATP is the number of phosphates. ATP has 1, 2, 3 phosphates, and ADP only has 1, 2. That's where you get the difference. Adenosine diphosphate for 2 and adenosine triphosphate for 3. So like I said, ADP is our partially charged battery. ATP is going to be our fully charged battery. So whenever the cell wants to store energy, it's going to add a phosphate group to make ATP, that fully charged battery. Whenever it's going to use or release that energy, it's going to break the bond right here, and breaking that bond will release energy for when the cell needs it. So what are some cases that we would need this source of energy? Carrying out active transport, synthesizing proteins, responding to chemical signals. This picture here of this lightning bug, that blink of light that a lightning bug produces is actually done by ATP energizing a particular enzyme required to do so. Now ATP is useful, as I've stated up here. It's useful, but it's limited. It's only in cells in small amounts. It's really great for energy transfer, but not for storage. So it's only in limited amounts because it can be regenerated as needed by taking in food. And then going through that whole ADP, adding a phosphate to form ATP process, and vice versa, breaking off the phosphate to release that energy. Now, there are two types of organisms out there. There are heterotrophs that consume things for energy, and autotrophs that are going to synthesize energy on their own or make energy by themselves. And that is the first type of organism we're going to talk about, and that process they use to make their own food is photosynthesis. Now we're talking about plants, algae, and bacteria that can photosynthesize to make their own food. And what photosynthesis actually means, if you break it down, photo means light, and synthesis means together. So if you kind of put 2 and 2 together there, you would have using light to put something together. Now, what do you think that something could be? Well, I didn't put this picture in here for nothing. They make sugar, and sugar is their source of food and a source of energy for many organisms. So let's jump into 8.2 now and talk about break down what photosynthesis is actually made up of. So the basics and the necessities of photosynthesis are light. We need pigments, we need chloroplasts, we need carbon dioxide, and we need water. Let's take a closer look at what I'm talking about when I talk about pigments. Pigments are light-absorbing molecules, and for plants, in their chloroplasts, they have two types of chlorophyll, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. And if you take a really close look at this graph, which is showing you what areas of absorption these types of chlorophyll, these pigment absorbed molecules, can grab energy at its most. So you have percent absorbed right here. If you take a look at the peaks, that's where we can see that these two different types of chlorophyll can absorb energy the most. So for the chlorophyll B, which is in blue, okay, the line is blue, and you can see at this peak in the blue spectrum, okay, or wavelength of about 460, 470, and another peak over here about red-orange, about 640, is where chlorophyll B can absorb light the best. And then chlorophyll A is the red line, and at its peak in the red region of about 670 or so, and then over here in the blue-violet region is its other big peak, are the two areas where chlorophyll A can absorb light the most. Now, where can these types of pigments not absorb very well? This yellow-green region, and especially the green. And that's why plants actually look green, because they reflect green light. They can't absorb green light. All right, now I want to take a closer look at this chloroplast here. And obviously in all plants we have chloroplasts. We talked about the plant cell, and if you take a closer look at a chloroplast right here, there's some important parts. You have the stroma, which is kind of like the cytoplasm of a cell, which is what everything else inside the chloroplast is floating in. You have the thylakoids, which are a single disc here. And if you make a stack of those single discs, or those thylakoid membranes, we would call that a granum. Okay, so those are the parts of a chloroplast that you're going to need to be familiar with in order to understand what's actually occurring in photosynthesis. Alright, so we need carbon dioxide and water in order to get our products of photosynthesis, which are sugars and oxygen. So let's take a deeper look at what is going on inside the chloroplast in order for that to happen. The first reaction we're going to talk about is the light-dependent reaction. Now, the light-dependent reaction happens in that thylakoid membrane. And as you can see, we need several things. We need light, obviously, to get it started. That's hence the name, light-dependent. Water is going to be needed to provide the electrons and hydrogen ions. And what is going to be produced is actually going to be used in the light-independent reactions. So from the light-dependent reaction, we are going to get out of that a byproduct of oxygen gas, which hopefully you realize that we actually use that oxygen gas produced by plants to respire ourselves, and we'll learn more about that later. But the light-dependent reaction also provides NADPH, which is an electron carrier, and then our source of energy that we just got done talking about, ATP. So these two things are going to power the light-independent reaction, because remember, they don't need light here and for this reaction to take place, but they do need the products from the light-dependent reaction in order to take place. The other reactant needed is carbon dioxide that the plant's just going to get from the air. And we provide, we as organisms ourselves will provide carbon dioxide that is in the air for them to acquire. And the byproduct for the light-independent reaction is sugars. So both of these processes work together in order to accomplish two different products that are achieved through this whole process. So if we look at this overall, photosynthesis, I have the word equation, okay, and I also have the symbol equation. You're going to need to be familiar with both. So the word equation just has the written reactants out, and if you remember from, hopefully, physical science last year, these are the reactants. They're on the left side of the arrow, carbon dioxide and water. And then our products overall are going to be glucose and oxygen. Now, what you see here over on top of the arrow is a catalyst that's going to be needed in order for this reaction to be completed, and that is light and those chlorophyll pigments within the chloroplast. Now, over here, we have the actual chemical formulas for what these reactants and products are. So, carbon dioxide is CO2, H2O is water, C6H12O6 is glucose, and O2 is going to be oxygen. The numbers in front of those chemical formulas are just the coefficients telling you how many molecules of each type there are. So that is photosynthesis in a nutshell. We'll be working and getting a little deeper into those types of reactions very soon, but until then, go back and review anything that you feel is necessary, and I'll see you next time.